So, should you use psychedelics as a tool for spiritual growth? This is becoming a huge question in our culture, and it's interesting because the points of view are, from no, it's the worst to yes, just do it, just do it. And the truth is, you need to figure out what's right for you, and the right answer is always in your own gut, and So we'll just start from there, but I'll give you some more background and understanding of what I understand about these tools and how they can be used. And so, first of all, if you're new to psychedelics, you just don't understand it. You may have heard a lot about psychedelics, the scary stuff, the great stuff, and you have this mental construct of what you believe psychedelics do, and how they affect you. I'm going back to my first true psychedelic experience, which was, I did very light, a couple of different light doses of mushrooms in my life, but it was beautiful, but it was not tripping. It wasn't what I had heard about, seeing visuals and these kind of things. But there was it was kind of just like a softening. So I still didn't really understand what it meant to have trip. Like, what does it mean to be in this altered state? I didn't even know what that altered state was. And so my first real trip was on LSD. And, and I just remember, for me, I had already had my remembering. And what I mean by remembering is when I finally, figured out that I'm a spirit having a human experience and there wasn't anything to be scared of. And so I'd already reached that plateau in my spiritual evolution, before I did psychedelics. So I kind of have a different kind of perspective of psychedelics. What psychedelics allowed me to do was to broaden and see things that I wasn't able to see without the psychedelic. Just gave me more vision, would probably be a good word for that. And so my first experience was, it was random. I kind of, I kind of lost the interest in doing psychedelics for spiritual gain, just because I didn't feel like I had anywhere to go. I mean, not that I was done, but I didn't have that ache, to get rid of anxiety and whatever else that my spiritual journey up into my remembering had me do it. So the interest in psychedelics just wasn't there. And then it was introduced by somebody I love, and they just spontaneously said, "Hey, do you want to do a little LSD with me?" And so this was my experience was, it was my gut. I had learned that I follow my gut, and my gut said, I just was like, do I want to do this? What the hell? Okay, let's do this. And so it was just the next day. So this wasn't there wasn't that, getting ready or preparing or anything like that. It was very spontaneous. I didn't know much about it. And then all of a sudden this opportunity hits. So so it was, it takes about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes for LSD to kick in. And you're just waiting for this experience that everybody's talked about for years. I was 49, I believe, or 50 49 when I did my first, trip. And so I was sitting on a cat. So we took it, we were having a nice little chat. And then we were sitting on a couch and we were looking. We just stopped kind of talking naturally, organically, and we had been just staring. And I had these paintings of from Hawaii. And the next thing you know, the paintings were alive. Saw the clouds moving, the waves were moving as if it was real life, that it was animating. And so that was my first reaction to the psychedelic. And there's a lot more to the psychedelic. It isn't just that these visuals happen. There's a lot more to it than that. But it's what I'm sharing with you is easing what might be happening as you cross over into this other kind of experience with psychedelics, because and that was my personal experience. And since then, I've looked at, I've had a lot of people, I've taken people on their first trips, and I have talked to a lot of people. People have a lot of questions. What is it like? Should I do it? Blah, blah, blah. And so this is just a video to share my experience and how these can be used. And I'm always going to go back to, it's your gut. And if your gut tells you to do it, do it. And if it doesn't tell you to do it, don't do it. Don't get talked into it. Do it on your own terms. And as far as which psychedelics, that's a whole nother conversation that I'm not going to get into in this video. But if you have questions about that, I'm happy to share my perspectives on that. Not that I'm super experienced in a lot of different kinds, but I definitely am with the two big ones, mushrooms and LSD. So, what are things that I would offer? First of all, at first, I started doing them and I just felt like the haphazard way of doing it was the best way to do it. Don't go in with any expectations. And then I had an experience that taught me that the set and setting thing is very important. And I don't call them bad. I had a tough experience. I would not call it a bad experience on psychedelics. Because I got so much from it. It was unbelievable. In fact, it almost gave me more, felt like I got more from that experience than I did from, all the easy, great, euphoric, amazing experiences. So I don't call them, but just to objectively look at it, I had an experience that was a bit tough for a bit of that experience. So I've had some experience with it. And so here are my thoughts on it. First of all, there is nothing wrong with starting slow. Meaning that, oftentimes people want that trip right away and they get excited about it. But there really is nothing wrong with taking a very, very small dose of mushrooms or even a very small dose of LSD. Now, it won't give you, this is what an expression that I could say is a great expression, which is you drop into a trip. So if you don't take enough mushrooms, or if the situation is not set up, you may not drop all the way in. And that's my experience. It's like, I still can have some experiences where I don't actually drop all the way in, but I'm feeling this very subtle, nuanced effect of the altered state of consciousness. So there's nothing wrong with, starting out, do a microdose all the way down to nothing, because there's a lot of people I've talked to that are so scared of these substances. And really, you can take a microdose, and we're talking about, 0.16 of a gram. I can't even remember what my microdose was. I used to make these. So it's, just an absolute small amount. And most of the time, the majority of people I've had that microdose have never feel anything from the microdose. But then, go up to half a gram, then do, go up to a full gram, go until, and then just, and you may actually drop in. I've dropped in on marijuana before. So, it's, you don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I can tell you, you're probably pretty safe with a, what I would call a micro dose, which would be not even a fourth of a gram. We're talking about even half of that. You can even do 0.1 grams. And what I can feel, if I've ever felt anything, is just the tiniest bit of uplift in my attitude or in my mannerism. So that's one piece of advice about it. Like any other PDMC, pre-digested mental concept, the use of psychedelics is not necessary, and it is necessary. But determining whether or not it should be or shouldn't be is an egoic state. So that's meaning that we don't need psychedelics, but we can also need. There's an identity. The need is an identity thing. Like I have friends that they want to do all their. It is their identity to not do spirituality. They want to do it without drugs. And to me, that's a predetermined mental concept, which the irony is that's what psychedelics help you bypass, is, you don't remember until you can get beyond pre-digested mental concepts. So should you do them? It's your gut that tells you whether you do it or not. If your mind's saying whether you should or should not, probably a PDMC. So what's another way to do it? And I would say one of the things, let's talk about, I just thought I would share this with you. And I think marijuana is a really good, I'm going to talk about it as a gateway drug. We fought this whole idea of this gateway drug to other drugs. But I'm going to say, use it as a gateway drug. Marijuana is a very good drug. And, and I have a lot of people that say, I can't do marijuana because it makes me anxious, or it makes me paranoid, or it makes me sleepy, or it makes me blah, blah, blah. And this is just what I want to say to that. First of all, I don't want to dissuade it. I'm not talking anybody into doing a drug or having an experience that doesn't goes against their gut. But another way to look at it is whether you're trying to get the drug to change your perspective, or you're allowing the drug to take you into a place. And so an example of that means that, if you say, I want to get drunk, then what you're doing is you are taking a substance and you are trying to get that substance to give you a conscious experience. But and I'm not saying that's a bad way and that's a bad thing, but there's another way to look at drugs and these tools, which is you can use them from the point of view of allowing them to take you where they want you to go. And so what I would say to somebody that gets paranoid or gets sleepy, perhaps you're taking too much. Because we have this situation where in our culture, we're so oversaturated with contrast, meaning that in order to feel satiated, we need these big emotional lifts. And so then we look to things like a powerful drug to give us those emotional lifts, this mood altering way. But something like marijuana can be used. And so this is another experience. So I've been both. I put down a lot of marijuana, and people at times would probably call me a stoner. And then there's other times where stoners, even if I'm a daily user, they'd be like, oh, he's not really a stoner. He is, I'm a sipper. I just take little amounts. And what's interesting is that sometimes I'll smoke, and I just often, my body tells me how much I can do and how much I can't. And oftentimes I just can't smoke a lot. My body says, nope, you're done. And sometimes I don't feel the effect of it. It doesn't give me that bang, emotional, oh, I'm stoned feeling. But what it does is the it puts me into its own experience. So it puts me into a focused attention, and what I don't realize. And so if I'm by myself, oftentimes I'll never have an experience because I won't have anything from the outside world that allows me to see the contrast that I'm actually having an experience of focused attention. Until like, so what'll happen is I will be so focused, and then somebody will talk to me and they'll be like, did you hear me? And I'm like, oh, no, I didn't even hear anything that you said. I don't even know. And then that's the moment that I realize that I was under the influence of the cannabis, the THC. And so, but it's the same sensation as if you were, like what people talk about being in the zone. If you've ever been working on a creative project and you're so focused that there's no more focus to be focused on your focus. And so your whole world becomes that thing. And then somebody might, interrupt you, and all of a sudden you realized how focused you were. And that's the effect. And that's oftentimes what I hear people when they start arguing whether cannabis is right for them or these drugs are right for them or not, is that that's their frame of reference. That I don't like these substances to take my consciousness, or to the experience that I'm having when I'm using these substances. And I'm saying, and my suggestion is that possibly you're looking at it incorrectly, or you're looking at it from a different lens, and the lens to look at it is very, very little. And I just met somebody recently that had just started their spiritual journey, and they couldn't tell me enough, they couldn't share with me enough how little marijuana they used, like a half a puff for their meditation. And they would do some meditation, long meditations without the substance, and then with the substance. And he just said that I just feel as if I'm going so much further. And that is one of the things that I would say about these kind of psychotropic drugs, is that they kind of soften the edges of reality. They soften our connection to PDMCs, predigested mental constructs. Because what we're doing in, let's just call it our sober state, is we take these things very seriously. And these kind of substances kind of give us perspective. They kind of push those PDMCs away from us a little bit, so we're not connected to them as an identity, and we can let things go. Like I had a friend actually recently that's not ready for these kind of experiences, and I was talking about they had brought up the mushrooms being legalized in Colorado. And I said, yeah, I responded that they help make distinction between, like it outs the ego. And the response was, I don't think I can handle seeing my whole ego at one time. And my response was that it was perfect. What a great thing to say. Because that's exactly what mushrooms do. Or these elements like cannabis or LSD, these kind of things, they soften the experience of meeting the ego. And what could be is that the people that have these tough experiences on psychedelics, oftentimes, there is a connection to something that they're not ready to let go of. And that's the thing, is that's what settings for, is preparing yourself for getting ready to take on these elements that you're not ready to look at. It's kind of, cognitive dissonance is a really great one. Like cognitive dissonance, if people could see cognitive dissonance, they would see that mental constructs literally place a blinder over you. that when you are attached to a PDMC that you're not ready to give up, you will protect it with everything you have, because everything you have is your identity, and you'll protect them. And that's the interesting thing about these kind of tools, is that it softens that, and it allows people to look at it from a softer position rather than a harsh position, which is life often does that. Because if we have cognitive dissonance and we're going around and we can't see something, a behavior that we're doing that is not congruent with our own happiness and other people's happiness, we're going to be walking into walls. People are not going to want to deal with that we can't see these things. And so it's a matter of these kind of things help us to see more of reality. It is like we make consciousness into this big philosophical question. And in truth, if you just lift up the tablecloth underneath, consciousness is literally just the ability to see things. It's either you could see it or you can't see it. And there's a lot of people that they create belief systems that literally cause them to not be able to see things in our reality. And and the people that want to let go of that and move beyond that, because life is better that way. Paradigm B stuff. They want to get to those, juicy, yummy things, like not just honesty, but sincerity, baby. That's the good stuff. They want so I was just introduced to this idea. They want the hugs, the hugs of compassion. Like instead of the mental idea of compassion, it's the sensation. What is the sensation in compassion when we understand both sides of a situation? It's like having a hug. It's the feeling of home. That's the revelation of compassion. And boy, I could go off into a whole different thing. But I want to try to stay focused on this as kind of should you do use these tools? And you're the one that will know that answer. And, in whatever terms that you need those under, that's where you're at right now. And just what I would recommend is, if you're on this path, is just always find good temperature questions to ask yourself. Like, what are you ready for? If you could, in a particular moment, if you could see the truth, would you take the truth? Would you take that path? Or would you still want to move in the trajectory that you're doing? And you will feel that in your gut. It's not a matter of this solid state, the stagnant state, the stasis being. Every day you're waking up dynamically and just asking yourself and taking your temperature and going, am I ready for this? Am I ready for that? Every day. There is no right or wrong. What's right will come to you. Cool.